Have you ever wondered what's really going through a narcissist's mind when they realize they've lost you for good? When a narcissist realizes they lose you permanently, the first thing that happens is a complete rewriting of who you are in their head. You weren't the amazing person who got away. You were never special to begin with. You were the broken, worthless person who was lucky enough to have their attention for a while and threw it away because you're too stupid to recognize greatness when it's standing right in front of you. This change happens almost instantly, like flipping a light switch. One day, you were their everything. The next day, you become the bad guy in a story designed to protect their ego. The narrative becomes clear. You were always damaged. The red flags were there from the beginning but were ignored because of their generous nature, their forgiveness, their willingness to see the best in people even when those people don't deserve it. Today, we're going to dive deep into what someone who has spent years manipulating, controlling, and putting you down is really thinking when their biggest source of attention has finally walked away and isn't coming back. What I'm about to share with you might surprise you because the truth about what narcissists think when they can't return to you is way more complex than most people realize. In this warped reality, the narcissist becomes the victim of your tricks. The story goes that you played games, pretending to be someone you weren't just to trap them in a relationship with someone who was beneath them. The belief becomes solid. The narcissist was the one being used. You were the real manipulator who fooled them with fake tears and made-up charm. This isn't just lying to themselves. It's a complete flip of reality that allows them to maintain their sense of superiority while dealing with being rejected. Mental lists start forming of every flaw, every mistake you made, every moment you showed weakness. That time you cried during a fight becomes proof of emotional instability. That time you questioned their behavior becomes evidence of paranoia and jealousy. That time you needed support becomes confirmation that you were always needy and clingy, someone who sucked energy dry and gave nothing back. What's most revealing about their thoughts is that everything centers on them being superior and you being inferior. There's no consideration of compatibility, personal growth, or different life goals. In their mind, relationships are hierarchical, and you were lucky to be chosen by someone so far above your level. The idea that two people might simply be wrong for each other, or that you might have evolved beyond what the relationship could offer, never enters their thinking. Instead, it's always about their elevated status and your failure to appreciate it. But here's where it gets really messed up. While this villain narrative is being constructed, there's also an obsession happening that reveals just how much power you actually had over them. Social media becomes a hunting ground, not because of missing you, but because evidence is needed to support the new story about who you are. The search is on for signs that you're falling apart without them, making bad choices, showing your true colors now that their so-called good influence has been removed from your life. When evidence appears of you doing well, being happy, moving on, and building a life that doesn't include them, a crisis erupts that can't be handled. The mind goes into overdrive trying to explain away anything that contradicts the carefully constructed story. If you're doing well, it must be fake. If you look happy, it's just pretending. If you're in a new relationship, you must be dating someone inferior who doesn't see through the act the way your former partner did. Detective work begins in earnest, studying every photo you post, every comment you make, every person you talk to, looking for cracks in what has been convinced is a big fake show being put on to create jealousy. The belief solidifies that deep down, you're miserable without them, crying yourself to sleep every night regretting the biggest mistake of your life, but too proud to admit it and come crawling back where you belong. This is when thoughts become almost delusional. Every song you share gets interpreted as having a secret message for them. Every mysterious post is really about them. Every change you make in your life somehow connects to your relationship with them. In this distorted worldview, the narcissist remains the center of your universe even though you're completely out of their life. The concept that you might genuinely be moving forward without giving them a second thought becomes impossible to accept, because being that irrelevant contradicts everything believed about their own importance. What's really revealing is how conversations about you happen with other people during this time. The description isn't of someone who got away or someone who was lost. Instead, the story becomes one of dodging a bullet, someone who showed their true colors just in time, someone who actually did them a favor by revealing how messed up and ungrateful you really were. Detailed stories emerge about your supposed mental health problems, your family issues, your inability to appreciate good treatment, your history of ruining good relationships. These aren't just lies told to save face. These stories become genuine beliefs because believing them is necessary for mental survival. The alternative, accepting that someone valuable was driven away through toxic behavior, would destroy the carefully built fantasy of being a superior person who deserves worship and never makes mistakes. But underneath this confident exterior, the obsession reveals a different truth. Constant checking up happens because somewhere deep down there's knowledge that if you're really doing better without them, it exposes the lie at the center of their identity. If someone can not only survive, but actually thrive after removing them from their life, what does that say about their supposed importance and value? This is why smear campaigns often begin. Rumors spread about your mental state, your character, your reasons for leaving. Anyone who will listen hears about how you were always unstable, how efforts were made to help you, but you refused to get better, how you turned on them despite all their patience and support. Again, these stories become genuine beliefs because believing them is necessary for continued functioning. When months pass and there's still no sign of appropriate suffering for your decision to leave them, thoughts become more desperate and bizarre. Crazy theories develop about why you're not falling apart. Maybe medication is making you numb. Maybe you've surrounded yourself with people helping you keep up this act. Maybe an addiction or unhealthy habit is temporarily hiding your pain. The simple explanation that you're genuinely better off without them cannot and will not be accepted because that truth is too devastating for the ego to handle. Instead, there's a doubling down on the belief that you're fundamentally broken and that your apparent happiness is either temporary or fake. This is when hoovering attempts often begin, but with a specific purpose. The goal isn't to win you back out of love or longing. The purpose is proving that you're still under their mental control. Carefully crafted messages get sent designed to trigger emotional reactions. Appearances happen in places where you're likely to be. Other people, mutual friends and family members, get enlisted to gather information or deliver messages. But these aren't genuine reconciliation attempts. These are psychological experiments designed to confirm that you still think about them, still react to them, still give them free space in your head. Even angry reactions serve the purpose because negative attention is still attention, and attention is what's craved above all else. When these attempts fail, when no contact gets maintained and their provocations go ignored, something interesting happens in the thought process. A grudging respect develops for your mental strength, but it gets framed in ways that preserve the superiority complex. You're not strong because you're healthy and self-aware. You're strong because you're stubborn, vengeful, and maybe even heartless in your ability to cut people out of your life. The narrative shifts to paint you as the cold, calculating one in the relationship, your ability to move on so completely becoming proof that you never really cared about anyone but yourself. In this warped logic, your mental health becomes evidence of mental illness, your self-respect becomes proof of selfishness, your boundaries become signs of cruelty. This mental gymnastics allows the victim story to continue while also explaining away your success without them. The conclusion becomes clear: the narcissist isn't the problem and never was. You are the problem, you always were, and your ability to function without them just proves how fundamentally broken and different you are from normal, feeling human beings. As time continues passing without any cracks in your resolve, what can only be described as mental prison sets in. There's a trap between the need to completely trash you and an obsessive focus on your life. Claims get made about not caring what you're doing, but social media gets checked daily. Declarations happen that you meant nothing, but you get brought up in conversations with new partners months or even years later. This contradiction creates a constant state of mental conflict that shows up in behavior in predictable ways. New relationships become more volatile, with increased suspicion of partners who show signs of independence, more controlling and possessive behavior because determination exists not to let anyone else slip away like you did. Fear of abandonment gets projected onto new partners while simultaneously pushing those partners away with increasingly toxic behavior. What gets thought about you during this extended period particularly reveals how the narcissistic mind operates. You become a symbol, not a person, but a representation of their biggest failure, their most significant loss of control, their proof that maybe they're not as irresistible and powerful as believed. But instead of learning from this experience, instead of using it as an opportunity for growth and self-reflection, it becomes evidence that the world is full of damaged people who don't appreciate quality when encountered. The story develops that you were a rare exception, someone so mentally disturbed that normal rules don't apply. Convincing happens that every other person who has left did so for understandable reasons, but you were different. You were the anomaly, the one who got away not because of their failure, but because of your incapacity to recognize what you had. This is perhaps the saddest aspect of how narcissists think about people who can never be recovered. The commitment to protecting their grandiose self-image is so strong that increasingly elaborate and delusional explanations for failures get constructed rather than engaging in the kind of honest self-examination that could actually help build healthier relationships in the future. Years can pass, and occasional thoughts about you still happen, not with fondness or regret, but with frustrated confusion. You remain the puzzle that couldn't be solved, the person who didn't follow the script written in their head, the one who had the audacity to assign them a supporting role in your life story instead of accepting the starring role believed to be deserved in theirs. What's especially disturbing is how your escape gets weaponized against future partners. New people in their life hear about the crazy ex who couldn't handle being with someone successful, who had abandonment issues, who was too damaged to appreciate real love when it was offered. Your strength gets transformed into their trauma story, positioning themselves as the long-suffering victim of your supposed emotional problems. Expertise develops in playing the wounded hero who tried to save someone who couldn't be saved. Dramatic retellings happen of how everything was given to you, how obvious flaws got overlooked because of belief in your potential, how exhaustion occurred from trying to help you become a better person, only to be betrayed and discarded when their honesty about your issues couldn't be handled. This narrative serves multiple purposes in their psychology. First, sympathy and attention get garnered from new people who see them as generous souls who suffered at the hands of an ungrateful partner. Second, positioning happens as relationship experts who learned hard lessons about giving too much of themselves to people who don't deserve it. Third, control gets established in new relationships by making it clear that the kind of behavior supposedly endured from you won't be tolerated. But here's where the obsession reveals itself most clearly. Even while telling these stories about how terrible you were, details get mentioned that reveal just how much thinking about you still happens. Conversations get remembered word for word, exact outfits from specific fights get recalled, your social media posts from months ago can be recited. The supposed indifference gets betrayed by encyclopedic knowledge of your life and behavior. When new partners inevitably get driven away with the same toxic behaviors that drove you away, another layer gets added to the delusion about you. In this mindset, the pattern of failed relationships isn't evidence of personal issues, but proof that you somehow damaged them, that something got broken inside that makes it harder to trust and connect with people. You become responsible not just for your own decision to leave, but for every relationship failure that follows. Genuine conviction develops that you created trust issues that didn't exist before, that lessons got taught about being more guarded, that demonstrations happened of how cruel people can be when they don't get their way. In this logic, every person who leaves after you is following the blueprint you created for how to hurt them. You're not just the one who got away, you're the one who opened the floodgates for others to abandon them too. This is when thoughts about you take on an almost supernatural quality. You become this powerful, manipulative force who somehow reaches across time and space to sabotage their future happiness. A level of influence and calculation gets attributed to you that borders on mystical. In this distorted reality, string pulling still happens in their life. Ways still get found to hurt them through your absence. Failures still get orchestrated from afar. Analysis begins of new partners for signs that might indicate similarity to you. Any display of independence, any boundary setting, any moment of disagreement becomes potential evidence that this new person is another version of you, another ungrateful individual who doesn't appreciate what's being offered. Hypervigilance develops for perceived patterns, creating self-fulfilling prophecies where paranoia and controlling behavior drives away partners who might have otherwise stayed. The most revealing aspect of long-term thoughts about you is how they fluctuate between complete dismissal and obsessive analysis. One day claims get made about never thinking of you. The next day long, mental monologues get crafted about your motives, your current situation, your probable regrets. Months can pass without mentions, then sudden references happen in contexts that have nothing to do with current life, revealing that you're never really absent from their thoughts. What makes this even more fascinating is how your memory gets used as a measuring stick for everyone who comes after you. Not because you were perfect, but because you represent the ultimate challenge to their sense of control. Every new person gets compared to you in ways that ensure they'll never measure up to the psychological hold you unknowingly had. You become the ghost that haunts every future relationship, not because you were their great love, but because you were their greatest defeat. The narcissist will often find themselves caught in loops of counterfactual thinking, endless what-if scenarios about how things could have been different if only you had been more grateful, more understanding, more willing to see their perspective. These mental loops serve no productive purpose, but provide a form of psychological comfort, allowing them to maintain the illusion that the relationship's failure was entirely your fault, while simultaneously feeding their obsession with the version of you that exists only in their head. Sometimes they'll even convince themselves that reaching out one more time might be the key that unlocks your supposed facade. Years might pass before they send that carefully worded message, testing whether time has softened your resolve or if desperation has finally set in. When met with continued silence or a firm rejection, the cycle of devaluation and obsession begins anew, often with even more intensity than before. The most disturbing aspect of their long-term thinking about you is how it reveals their complete inability to form genuine human connections. You don't exist in their mind as a real person with your own thoughts, feelings, and motivations. Instead, you've become a character in their ongoing drama, a symbol of their victimization, a puzzle to be solved rather than a human being who made a rational decision to protect their own well-being. One of the most arrogant assumptions in their thinking is the belief that you'll never get over them. Not because you love them so much, but because you'll never again have access to someone of their caliber. In their mind, you'll spend years comparing every future partner to them and finding everyone lacking. The possibility that you might find someone who treats you better, understands you more deeply, or simply makes you happier is completely outside their realm of consideration. To them, you've peaked by being with them, and everything else will be a downgrade. Another fascinating delusion is their conviction that you're bitter and angry about the breakup, even if you initiated it. The concept of someone feeling relief or peace after ending a relationship with them is so foreign to their thinking that it might as well be impossible. Any negative emotions you might have must be about losing them, not about the damage they caused. If you seem upset, it's because you miss them. If you seem calm, it's because you're hiding your devastation. There's no scenario in their mind where you're genuinely better off without them. Theories develop about your psychology that would be almost comical if not so disturbing. Decisions get made that you have attachment disorders, personality disorders, family trauma that explains your inability to appreciate them. Amateur psychology happens with diagnoses of conditions that conveniently explain why their worth couldn't be recognized while simultaneously clearing them of any responsibility for the relationship's failure. What never gets acknowledged, what minds are fundamentally incapable of processing, is the simplest explanation of all. You left because of toxic behavior. You stayed away because life became better without them. You thrived because removing their influence allowed healing and growth. You found happiness because you were no longer walking on eggshells, no longer doubting your own perceptions, no longer accepting treatment that was slowly destroying your sense of self. But accepting that truth would require a level of self-awareness and accountability that narcissists simply don't possess. So instead, entrapment happens in elaborate delusions, forever convinced that you were the problem, forever mystified by your ability to resist their charm, forever certain that the biggest mistake of your life was made when you walked away from someone as extraordinary as them. In their mind, victory didn't happen when you left them. You simply revealed that you were never worthy of them in the first place. And that, perhaps more than anything else, shows just how completely the nature of your relationship was misunderstood, along with the true reasons why you found the strength to walk away and never look back. The reality is that understanding what goes through a narcissist's mind when they can never return reveals the depth of their delusion and the impossibility of reasoning with someone so disconnected from reality. Their mental gymnastics, their obsessive stalking disguised as indifference, their complete rewriting of history to preserve their ego, these patterns show why no contact isn't just a strategy, it's a necessity. When someone's mind operates in such warped ways that your strength becomes their victimization story and your happiness becomes proof of your mental illness, there's no middle ground for healthy interaction. The narcissist's inability to process simple truths about their own behavior confirms that walking away wasn't just the right choice, it was the only choice that preserved your sanity and allowed you to reclaim your life from someone who will forever remain trapped in their own elaborate fantasies about who you were and why you left. Have you recognized these thought patterns in a narcissist who can never come back to your life? Share in the comments what signs helped you understand their obsessive mental gymnastics and delusional rewriting of your relationship. If this helped you see how their minds work when they've permanently lost control over you, like this video and subscribe for more insights about narcissistic behavior and the reality behind their desperate attempts to maintain relevance in lives they can no longer access.